ever, especially with Vance in such a powerful position.
It's like he's brought this part of America, this perspective, into the halls of power. Whether he can translate that into real change, well, that remains to be seen.
But one thing's for sure. J.D. Vance's story is a reminder that America is a tapestry of different experiences, different struggles.
Hey, Whitterers, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know we love bringing you these knowledge shortcuts, these deep dives for busy minds. And today we're tackling a book that feels especially relevant right now. Hillbilly Elegy. Have you heard of it?
Oh, absolutely. A memoir by J.D. Vance that really shook things up when it came out.
Right. And of course now he's our vice president-elect after that wild election, huh?
Talk about a story that captures the zeitgeist.
For anyone who hasn't had the chance to actually read Hillbilly Elegy, we're going to break it all down for you.
Give you those insights.
Exactly. So first things first, what's this book all about?
At its heart, Hillbilly Elegy is J.D. Vance's personal story.
A memoir.
Right? A memoir. But it's also so much more than that. It's a deep dive into the white working class experience in Appalachia.
A part of America that we don't always hear from, right?
Exactly. Vance takes us straight to his childhood in Middletown, Ohio.
A Rust Belt town.
Yeah, a town that's seen better days, struggling to stay afloat after the decline of the steel industry.
Like so many towns across America, right?
Absolutely. Vance paints this really vivid picture of Middletown abandoned storefronts, the looming presence of that AK steel mill, just this sense of disillusionment.
Yeah, you can practically feel the weight of that lost industry, that loss of opportunity.
And it's not just about economics, it's about identity, too. Vance connects his story to this larger narrative about Appalachian identity.
Which is fascinating, right? Because Middletown's in Ohio, not exactly the heart of Appalachia.
Right, but Vance traces it back to the Hillbilly Highway, that mass migration of folks from Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, who headed north in the mid-20th century looking for jobs, a better life.
And his own family was part of that migration, right?
Yeah, his grandparents left poverty in Kentucky, hoping for a fresh start in Ohio.
But it wasn't always easy.
Definitely not. They faced a lot of prejudice, that stigma of being hillbillies, outsiders, even though they were trying to contribute, build a life.
And Vance tells this story, it's kind of a funny one actually, about how his grandparents reacted when a store clerk was rude to their son.
Oh yeah, what'd they do?
They went ballistic.
Yeah.
Smashed a toy right there in the store, caused a whole scene.
Classic.
It really shows you that fierce loyalty, that protectiveness that runs deep in their Appalachian culture.
Family over everything.
And that loyalty, while admirable, also played into some pretty intense family dynamics, which Vance doesn't shy away from describing.
Oh, yeah. His family was a real cast of characters.
Definitely. You've got Mama, his grandmother, this tough-as-nails, chain-smoking force of nature who basically raised him.
And his mom, struggling with addiction, in and out of relationships, leaving Vance craving that stability, that sense of belonging.
It's really a story about how those early experiences shape us, for better or worse.
And the thing is, Vance's family history goes way back. He talks about Mama's side, her lineage, and it's fascinating.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
He mentions this story, it was even in the New York Times, about his great-grandfather. Apparently, he was involved in this murderous feud, a real backwoods, Hatfield and McCoy kind of thing.
Whoa, that's intense.
Right. And Vance talks about reading that article, feeling this weird sense of pride, like, that's my family,
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It really speaks to this culture of honor, of protecting your own, even if it means resorting to violence. These old world values clashing with modern society.
It makes you think about where Vance comes from, the values he was raised with, and how that might play into his role as vice president, right?
Absolutely. It's all connected. So listeners, pay attention to these early details. They really lay the foundation for understanding J.D. Vance, the man, the politician, and everything in between.
It's like getting a glimpse behind the curtain, understanding the forces that shape the person who might be a heartbeat away from the presidency.
And we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to unpack about Vance's journey, his transformation, and what Hillbilly Elegy has to say about America today.
But we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned, Witterers, there's more to come.
Keep those earbuds in.
Okay, Witterers, we're back and ready to dig even deeper into J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy. We left off talking about his family, that Appalachian code of loyalty, and the colorful characters who shaped his childhood.
Right. And those early years, they weren't exactly a walk in the park for Vance.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
He paints a pretty raw picture of what it was like growing up in that environment.
Yeah, a lot of instability, moving between homes, witnessing some pretty intense stuff like domestic violence, dealing with his mom's struggles with addiction.
It's heavy stuff, and Vance is really honest about the impact all that had on him, even experiencing those stress-related symptoms as a kid.
Yeah, those things can really stay with you.
Absolutely. And for Vance, all that turmoil played out in his own struggles, right? He talks about his anger, the resentment he felt, that constant feeling of being an outsider.
He was searching for some kind of direction, some stability.
And that's when he makes a pretty life-changing decision, right? He joins the Marines.
Yeah, classic story, right? Troubled kid finds purpose and discipline in the military.
More than just a cliche, though, right? I mean, for Vance, this was a turning point.
Oh, absolutely. The Marines provided him with that structure, that sense of order and purpose that was missing in his life up to that point.
He even tells this funny story about boot camp, his first encounter with a drill instructor.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. What was it again?
So picture this. Vance is at boot camp, day one, and he's caught with a piece of cake.
Uh-oh. Rookie mistake.
Big time. And the drill instructor, without missing a beat, smacks the cake right out of his hand. No messing around.
Talk about a wake-up call.
Right. And it's a small detail, but it really illustrates the kind of transformation Vance went through in the Marines.
He learned to follow orders, to push his limits, embrace that discipline he'd never really experienced before.
And it wasn't just about physical training and all that. It was a mental shift too, right? He talks about losing weight, gaining confidence, developing that self-reliance.
Yeah, you can really see that when he returns home to Middletown.
People treated him differently, right?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't just that troubled kid anymore.
Exactly. He was a Marine, a symbol of strength.
There's this scene where he goes back to his grandfather's old barber shop, and for the first time, the barber shakes his hand, treats him like an equal.
It's like they finally see him, not just as a kid, but as a man.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the way people perceived him, right? His time in the Marines gave him a whole new perspective on Middletown itself.
Yeah, he started to see things differently. The poverty, the addiction, that cycle of dysfunction.
Like he was waking up to the bigger picture, the forces that had shaped his life and the lives of everyone around him.
And that awareness continued to grow as he pursued higher education.
First at Ohio State and then Yale Law School.
Talk about a culture shock. From Middletown to Yale, that's a huge leap.
Huge. And, Vance talks about feeling out of place, like he didn't quite belong in that world.
He even shares the story, it's kind of telling, about cleaning up a spilled drink at a restaurant with a classmate.
What happened?
Well, Vance and his classmate are cleaning up this mess, right? And their other classmates just walk away, totally oblivious.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to sting a little.
It's that moment where he realizes, I'm different. I don't come from the same world as these people.
Even though he's achieved so much, he still feels like an outsider.
It's that tension that runs through the whole book, right? That struggle to reconcile those two identities, the kid from Middletown and the Yale law grad.
It's almost like he's living in two different Americas.
And that's something that resonates with a lot of people, right? That feeling of not quite fitting in, of straddling different worlds.
And it makes you wonder, can you ever truly escape your roots? Or are they always a part of who you are, no matter how far you go?
Deep questions, right? And those are the kind of questions that J.D. Vance's story raises, questions that are relevant to all of us, no matter where we come from.
So stay tuned, Witterers, because in our final part, we're going to tackle those big questions head on, explore what Vance's journey has to say about modern America and what kind of vice president he might be. Okay, Witterers, we're in the home stretch of our deep dive into Hillbilly Elegy, and things are about to get really interesting. I mean, think about it. J.D. Vance, from struggling kid in Middletown to Yale Law School, and now he's our vice president. What does his story tell us about America today?
Well, one of the big themes Vance wrestles with throughout the book is this idea of social mobility.
The American dream, right? Pulling
Right.
yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. And Vance, he achieves that dream, right? Escapes poverty, serves his country, gets that Ivy League education. But there's this constant tension, this pullback to his roots.
Like he never fully belongs in either world, right?
Yeah.
Middletown or Yale. It's like he's straddling two different Americas.
And that tension, that struggle, it speaks to a larger divide in our society, one that we've seen become even more pronounced in recent years.
And, Vance doesn't sugarcoat anything. He lays it all out there, the poverty, the addiction, this family dysfunction that's holding so many communities back.
But he also highlights the resilience of those communities, that sense of loyalty, the deep bonds that connect people.
It's like, yeah, things are tough. But there's this strength there, this spirit that refuses to give up.
And it forces us to look in the mirror, right? To ask some hard questions about the American dream. Is it really attainable for everyone? Or are there barriers that some people just can't overcome?
Like he's saying, look, I made it out, but it wasn't easy, and I had a lot of help along the way. Not everyone has those same advantages.
Exactly. And that brings us to the million-dollar question.
Right.
What kind of vice president will J.D. Vance be?
Right. Will he be a voice for the people he grew up with, the folks in Middletown and countless towns just like it?
It's hard to say for sure, but his journey to this point has been anything but predictable.
He came onto the scene as this outsider, right? Skeptical of the political establishment, tapping into that populist wave.
And then, his campaign for vice president, it seems like there was a shift, a softening of his tone, more emphasis on unity.
Almost like he was trying to bridge that divide we were just talking about between the working class and the elites.
Trying to find that common ground.
And, he won, even if it was close. So clearly, his message resonated with a lot of people.
Makes you think about the power of personal stories, right? How they can connect with voters on a deeper level.
It's like they saw themselves in Vance's struggles, his triumphs, and they believed that he understood their lives, their challenges.
And that brings us back to Hillbilly Elegy. It's more than just a memoir. It's a social commentary, a wake-up call.
It sparked this national conversation about class, about identity, about the forgotten corners of America.
And that conversation, it's more important now than ever, especially with Vance in such a powerful position.
It's like he's brought this part of America, this perspective, into the halls of power. Whether he can translate that into real change, well, that remains to be seen.
But one thing's for sure. J.D. Vance's story is a reminder that America is a tapestry of different experiences, different struggles.
And if we want to create a better future, a more just and equitable society, we need to listen to all those voices, even the ones that are often marginalized.
Hillbilly Elegy, it's given us a glimpse into one of those voices, a voice that's now shaping the direction of our country.
So, Witterers, that's our deep dive into J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy, a story about family, about struggle, about the complexities of the American dream, and a story that, with Vance as our vice president, takes on a whole new level of meaning. We'd love to hear your thoughts, what resonated with you, share your reactions on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
And here's a final thought to chew on. Vance's story focuses on the white working class, but there are countless other groups in America facing similar challenges. How can we create a system where everyone has a shot at success, no matter where they come from? It's a big question, but a crucial one for us to grapple with as a nation.
Food for thought. And that's what we're all about here at Witter, giving you those knowledge nuggets, sparking your curiosity, making you think about the world in new ways. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to Hillbilly Elegy and all the other cool stuff we talked about. Until next time, Witterers, keep on learning, keep on growing, and keep those earbuds tuned in for more deep dives.